Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Sam's Healing Podcast. As you know, I'm Sam. I'm thrilled to have you tune in today. And we've got a special guest who's made a way to come in more and more frequently. His name is Michael Webb. He's a brilliant therapist. Michael, as always, thank you so much for coming in for this little podcast and a journey into the minds of those in need of saving.
No saving. Just facilitating, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. Always happy to be here. Love sharing about what we do.
And today we are going to bring to the forefront a concept that is really fascinating. It can help those who are dealing with infidelity or addiction. It can help those who are dealing with childhood and developmental trauma. It can be something that can help them in dealing with childhood sexual abuse. The backdrop is this: relationships are hard. Doing couples work with our spouse or partner is even harder when there's been infidelity, addiction, broken trust, developmental childhood trauma. But you said this to me the other day, and I'm going to read it word for word. You said, when there is a truth or a reality we need to address, but either we don't want to face it or we aren't aware of it due to psychological defenses, we tend to act out the issue. What are psychological defenses?
So psychological defenses are ways of protecting our ego at large from things that are threatening or uncomfortable, maybe things that we can't or we fear that we can't face. Sometimes they're things that we faced in childhood and they were overwhelming. And we remember it as being overwhelming, but we forget that we were a child when it was overwhelming. And now in adulthood, we have the resources to handle it. And so things like being in denial, which is not lying to ourselves. Denial is we really don't see it. If we're in denial, chances are we're justifying the issue in a way that selectively removes the elements of reality that make it a problem. We can be minimizing it. Yeah, maybe that's there. Maybe there is an elephant in the living room, but he doesn't eat much. And so these defenses, again, they selectively remove the elements of the issue that make it a problem, that make it uncomfortable, that make it bad. The things that make it a problem to where we can see it, we can acknowledge it, and yet not see it as the problem. And as a result of that, when somebody brings it up, we will be like, hey, what? This is not a deal. If somebody is drinking too much, yeah, I have a couple of drinks after work. Yeah, but they're quart glasses.
Fair. Definitely fair point.
And so the justifying and the minimizing or denying entirely, which can happen where we are literally saying, no, not happening. Absolutely not happening. And in that moment, we might even be able to pass a polygraph test that we cannot bring to mind the issue, the problem, the situation that is being brought up. And so the thing is, even though we're in denial of it, even though maybe we don't see it or we don't see it as a problem, what we will do is act it out because it's still the issue, the problem is still putting pressure on our conscious mind. It's still popping up in ways that we will act out. And one of the ways we act out is through psychological games.
Right, exactly. And so talk about psychological games. Now, what I want the viewer and the listener to understand is this is really subconscious behavior. This is subconscious behavior at a level that is fascinating and brilliant. But rest assured, we are not saying that your partner is trying to consciously play a game with you. Now, if they are a true narcissist, that's a different story. That's another podcast. Today, we're talking about subconscious behavior that are typically, you would say, unintentional, right? And that we are not even aware that we are participating in a psychological game. Is that fair?
Yeah, we the games that we are talking about here are can be almost mindless in the sense that I'm responding to an emotion that I'm having. I'm responding to what I'm consciously aware of. And maybe I'm responding to irritation that is that pressure of the issue that I don't want to face. So I might be irritable and I might lash out, or I might provoke someone to lash out because I want to bring the issue to the forefront. And I'm still not aware of what I want to talk about. I'm still not aware of the problem. And so I'm acting out the fact that you and I have a conflict, but not necessarily ever addressing the conflict.
That's the key, not addressing the conflict. Is it safe to say we're not addressing the conflict, but we are trying to get our needs met? But this is a subconscious, unintentional way of trying to get our needs met because it's predictable. Is that fair?
Yes, it's we choose who we play these games with somewhat subconsciously too. Like if I want to play a game, a psychological game with you, I can tell intuitively that you'll play with me.
Now again, people might be listening going, you keep using the word game. Well, this is from Eric Berne, right? He described this behavior as a psychological game. And he categorized and described these games in the 60s and 70s, right? But
Yeah.
research has validated his descriptions, demonstrating their usefulness in identifying what is actually interfering with our happiness, peace, oneness, fulfillment, and healing with our partner, right? But expand upon, even though it's called a game, it's not like we're conscious of it. It is subconscious behavior that maybe we developed when we were young. Is that fair?
Yeah. Eric Berne, who, when you read his writing, you just got to use a snarky voice. He says, literally in the book, Games People Play, that a child rearing is essentially teaching the kid what games to play. That, I mean, life is hard, like you were saying earlier. Relationships are hard. There are things that apply all kinds of stress. Sometimes some stress we cannot even get out from under. Financial stress, health issues, difficulties with work, with children, with politics, society, religion. There's all these pressures that we really can't escape and have to deal with. And these games are not nefarious. Yeah. Generally speaking, they're a way of letting off some of the pressure around something that I can't really do anything about, or at least I believe I can't do anything about.
Exactly. So we get a husband and wife who are in a situation, one's been unfaithful or one's an addict, but there's trauma. And let's use a man who feels like he can't do anything about a certain situation. There is the above the fold feeling of frustration and irritability, anger, resentment, whatever, right? He can't get his wife to do what he wants him to do. And what will help the viewing audience and the listening audience is we're going to talk about the first game. And we're going to do this series over multiple games that are going on in the subconscious. But the first game we're talking about today is the game Uproar. And so this psychological game that is kind of unintentional, but is definitely subconscious. If a husband is in this situation and he plays the game subconsciously of Uproar, what does that look like?
So I'll pull that straight from Eric Berne's book back in the 60s. Now imagine that a couple, they decide they want to go to the movies. And on the way there, they get dressed, they get in the car, they're heading that way. And the wife says, we really need to do some work on the house. The carpet's dirty And even though we clean it, it still looks dingy. We just need to get that replaced. Now, she knows not to bring this up because business hasn't been good. Money's a little bit tight. And she's highlighting that they have to live with carpet that she didn't like, but it's also triggering the insecurity and feelings of inferiority the husband has because he's not able to provide enough money to replace the carpet. And so she says that, highlighting the issue that there's financial stress that they can't get around and essentially causing tension. And so he, comes back with a snarky comment like, you're always wanting to have me do something around the house. It feels like I'm not good enough for you. And she's like, oh, no, I didn't say you weren't good enough for me. Really? I think that's exactly what you said. And as a result of him feeling that way, he's like, and by the way, you're not making many dinners these days. How often do we have to go out to eat? That is expensive too. And she says, well, I've got the PTA stuff and the kids always need something. And so I really don't have time to do that. You don't have time? You don't have time? Let's talk about how I don't have time.
Right.
And pretty soon, it's like, you know what? I don't even want to go to the movies tonight. They turn around, he takes her home. I'll go to the movies by myself. Now, there are multiple issues here that are being avoided. One of them is because he's feeling inferior. He's not wanting to be open or vulnerable with his wife about the genuine insecurity that can come up because finances are a thing. Also, she's wanting, because he's not willing to be emotionally vulnerable, she's not wanting to sleep with him. And the thing is, once she starts a fight, she knows he's going to eventually storm out and they're not going to have to, he's not going to have to, or she's not going to have to worry about him making any advances later on in the evening. So
Right.
she solved her problem of wanting to avoid intimacy. He solved his problem of not wanting to talk about feeling inferior because he hasn't got enough money, or at least he feels like he doesn't. And the things that are going on there are a fear of intimacy, a fear of connection, a fear of powerlessness over things that maybe we can't change. And all of those things could be addressed if both of them would be vulnerable. But instead, they have an uproar. They have a fight about things that don't even matter, that are peripheral, potentially adjacent to the issue, but not the real issue.
Because it could have been avoided, short-circuited, if one of them, and we're not singling out the wife, we're not singling out the husband, but if one of them was to say, hey, hold on, are you okay? Are you feeling a certain kind of way about this? I'm not trying to do X. I'm feeling this. What are you feeling? Is it fair to say the game could have been prevented if someone would have chosen vulnerability instead of victimhood, right?
Yes. And you use a great word there, victimhood. See, the game, each one of these games that we'll talk about has three primary parts. One's a persecutor, the bad guy. The other one is the victim. And then the third role is a rescuer. And frequently, in the course of some games, all two people can play all three roles. In the game we're talking about here, she could have played the role of rescuer and said, you know what, honey, I know that you're working really hard and doing the best you can. So am I. I've got my job too. And I wasn't trying to say that you weren't doing enough. I was just venting because I vacuumed the carpet today and it still looked bad. You're great. You're awesome. It's just the economy sucks. It's not either one of us. Let's just have a good night.
Yeah.
And he could have said, I always wanted to be able to provide everything for my family that I needed. And I just have these chronic feelings of insecurity because I can't make more money than I make. I can't work harder than I am. I want to be home with you and the kids too. So I don't work overtime. And there's It's just frustrating. And she's like, yeah, it is frustrating for both of us. And they hold hands and they've identified that life is hard. External pressures are putting pressure on our marriage, that we can come together and have some sympathy and compassion for each other in the face of things we can't change. And at the same time, maybe have a diversion by the movie and, connect later on in the evening and enjoy themselves. But that would require vulnerability.
Right. And we are masters at creating an uproar so we don't have to face the issues, right? And these psychological games are things that we do when we are, and I'm asking you a question, when we're intimacy avoidant, when we're maybe afraid of rocking the boat, or we struggle with maybe codependency, or we're dismissive avoidant. I mean, why do we do these things? Is it because we are just terrified, or is it also that we don't want to face the issue?
So there's multiple levels to that, to answer that. And I'll just start with the first one for today, and then maybe we can get into the deeper ones later on. The three ego states that I've talked about before, the child, the parent, and the adult, all are somewhat intimacy avoidant because of what I think might be termed primary insecurity. We are all limited in our abilities. We don't have every talent. We didn't all hit the genetic lottery or the financial lottery or any lottery. And so, generally speaking, average, or that middle part of the bell curve, is where a lot of us fall. And we're, although we're maybe exceptional in the sense of we're loved and important to the people around us, but in the world at large, we may feel very anonymous and alone. And so we will play these games to avoid intimacy, and we avoid intimacy because it's uncomfortable. And the more compassion and openness, acceptance, forgiveness that exist within a relationship, or for that matter, exist within an individual, the easier it is to open up and be vulnerable. Now, if there's a real problem, one that I can do something about, and this is when the games get a little second level, I guess you could say. When I do know I'm doing something or I've done something, I do know there's something I can do about it. But I fear that I can't. I fear that it's too hard. I'm worried that I don't know how, or that I can't pull it off. I'll avoid intimacy because I don't want to admit potential failure. Because I'm afraid to fail, I'll be afraid to try. And that fear also reduces intimacy. Now, the thing about it is that there are other sources of being intimacy avoidant. For example, in childhood, if being connected and vulnerable with other people is associated with pain, or with rejection, or judgment, criticism, condemnation, or just abuse, if that association is made early on in childhood in one way or another through things at home or possibly bullying at school, then a bid for attention or a bid for vulnerability or openness will be met with an initial bracing response of fear. And if I'm really self-aware, I can go like, okay, this is my spouse, this is my friend, it's okay to be vulnerable here, and I can go ahead and say what I need to say. But generally speaking, nobody gets through life, nobody gets through childhood without some adverse experiences that are related to being vulnerable, because children are vulnerable all the time. And so we all have a little bit of that, the fear of being seen for who we are, because, generally we're afraid that we're not as good as we really are.
And you said something really interesting, which is if we identify vulnerability with pain, or if we identify intimacy with pain, we're going to find a way to work around feeling that pain, which is where a psychological game comes in and makes itself readily available for us. Because again, it's not that we know that we're playing this game. It's a workaround that we have developed subconsciously for us to be able to avoid or for us to be able to sabotage. Is that fair?
Yes. And again, it can be very unconscious. Even if we may be aware of the insecurity or the fear of failure, we may still be unaware that we're playing games. And, there could be a better term for it than games, because people think of games, psychological games, as something that is played by a narcissist to manipulate people.
Right.
The reality is, under these circumstances, we're manipulating ourselves and potentially manipulating somebody else. Dr. Cartman, who's done research and worked in the field of transactional analysis since the 60s, and I think it's still a professor, has said that, we pick the people that will play the game with us intuitively. And then if they're resistant to playing the game, we will provoke them.
Yeah.
We will, for example, just keep pecking at them until we get the response we want. And the thing about it is, if there's a couple doing work with me or you or someone, and they have an awareness that, okay, I'm going to get provoked until I do what he wants or she wants, and then the game is on. I resist provoking. I resist it. I resist it. I resist it. Our partner can still perceive that we're playing the game by not playing the game.
Right.
And so it gets kind of insidious in that sense. The antidote here, each of these games have a thesis. And the thesis of Uproar is we can't solve the problem.
Mm.
It's a discount of us. We can't solve the problem, and we can't be okay till we solve the problem. So we can't be honest about the problem, because then we are honest about not being okay. My thoughts started to fall, but I remember so the antithesis, the antithesis of that game would be to drop your shoulders, drop your hands, and go, I want to buy new carpet too. But we both know it's not in the budget, and that sucks, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to be sorry. You're doing your best. I'm doing my best. You know what? We can throw some carpet fresh on it, maybe buy a rug or something. We'll be okay. Carpet's no big deal. We've got everything we need.
Because what's most important is that we are one and on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And on a real page.
On a real page with authenticity, and not, now I won't say not playing games as though we are saying that our partner is willingly trying to invoke a reaction. But these are the subconscious games that are going on. And so today, I hope that this has helped you, whether you're unfaithful or betrayed, whether you're walking through betrayal trauma or childhood and developmental trauma. At the end of the day, Michael, if they feel like, okay, this resonates with me, besides reaching out to do some work with you or myself, what else can they do?
So one thing would be to ask themselves, am I discounting me or my partner by believing we can't solve the problem? I know we're having arguments sticking, just with Uproar. I know we're having arguments about things that don't really matter. And these arguments involve emotions that are very intense. So clearly something matters.
Right.
So how am I discounting our ability to solve the problem? Or another way of looking at it is, how am I giving into fear of things that I don't know how to change, or I'm afraid that I can't change, or maybe I know that aren't changeable and I don't know how to be okay with it?
Is it helpful for example, a betrayed spouse to say, what am I really feeling? Sometimes we have to write down what we're feeling. Sometimes we have to actually say, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. Doesn't it help us, and won't it help someone who feels like they're in the middle of this psychological game to write what they're feeling down?
Absolutely. Journaling is a great way of doing it. And also, sometimes we need to get a list of feelings, that you can go pull off the internet. Just give me some names and some faces that are expressing these emotions so that maybe I can identify the emotion. A lot of times we'll express our emotion as a judgment or a criticism of another person. Like, I feel neglected. Well, you're being neglected, but that's not your feeling.
Yeah.
Your feeling may be loneliness or sadness. I feel like you're stonewalling me. That may be frustration or desperation, or again, sadness or fear. Identifying the emotion. What am I really feeling means eliminating the judgments and the evaluations and the assumptions and just listening. And sometimes it's right here at the center of your chest. Sometimes it's in the back of your neck. Sometimes you notice that your feet just won't stop moving.
Yeah.
Where do they want to go? What are you trying to get away from or get to?
It's fascinating to think and talk on this level. That's why when you and I discussed it, I thought it would be wonderful to do several podcasts on these games that we're playing. At the end of the day, one thing I can tell you, you that are watching and listening, if you feel like you're in the middle of a game, it could be very helpful to stop and say, hold on. What are you really saying to me, partner, spouse? What are you really feeling right now? If you can tell me what you're feeling, let's go for the feelings. Let's focus on what you're feeling because I want to tap into what you're feeling. And then reciprocity, your partner tapping into what you're feeling to say, let's not go through this game because I know you're not intentionally doing this. But let's get beyond the game and let's get into feelings. So if you want a feeling sheet, you can reach out to me at samshealingpodcast@gmail.com. I can send you a Word document. You can also go on Amazon and find a feelings wheel that will give you several feelings that you can utilize. Michael and I use those in our sessions, helping people get to what they're feeling. If I can help in any way whatsoever, please reach out to me. You can leave a comment here. You can also email me at the email address I just mentioned. Michael, for them, if they want to do some work with games, if they're like, man, Michael gets me and I get Michael, and they want to find you, how do they find you and book a session with you?
So just look me up, Michael Webb, LPC in Keller, Texas, or Flower Mound, Texas. And just shoot me an email through Psychology Today. I will respond within 24 hours. And even if I can't be the person that you work with, I can direct you to other people that have an understanding of what we're talking about here.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Michael, as always, thanks for coming in. I can't wait for the next game that we're going to talk through. If I can help in any way, please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll see you next time on Sam's Healing Podcast.